All right, I'm going to introduce our day chair today. Our day chair is Meg Waterman. Meg is president at Aloft Technologies, a firm committed to pilot health, comfort, and safety using design to make the best aviation headsets. Her educational background wouldn't suggest that she would enter into this as her career. She studied Western art history, particularly the ancient Roman world at Kalamazoo College and the American University of Rome. After college, she took on a variety of jobs that sounded fun at the time. Gallerist, matchmaker, I want to hear more about that, closet designer, before she realized that a foundation in a business would be helpful in any field. Meg got her MBA in entrepreneurship at the University of St. Thomas here in Minneapolis, and then spent a brief stint consulting in Atlanta. The summer in the South drove her back, and she's called Twin Cities her home, the Twin Cities her home since 2008. Russ Mickelitz introduced her to Rotary in 2013, and a month-long trip to India introduced her to the power of Rotary to build community and do good in the world. Meg, thank you for being day chair today.
Good morning, everybody. I have the pleasure of introducing Deb Salls. Deb is the Executive Director of Social Venture Partners Minnesota, an equity-focused grant-making organization that supports innovative youth-serving nonprofits in the Twin Cities by engaging philanthropists and community leaders to advance racial, economic, and social justice for young people. Prior to moving back to Minnesota for this position, she served for 10 years leading Bike Works in Southeast Seattle, that promotes the bicycle as a vehicle for change to empower youth and build resilient communities. She spent the past 25 plus years in youth development, young adult and youth leadership programming, fundraising, and nonprofit management. Before moving to Seattle, she had a long career in the YMCA in Minneapolis, St. Louis, and the national headquarters in Chicago. Deb holds a BA in sociocultural anthropology and a master's of education in youth development leadership from the University of Minnesota, as well as a master's in nonprofit management from Washington University in St. Louis. Deb was also an adjunct faculty member at Highline College in the Youth Development BAS program and facilitates peer learning table talk sessions for fundraising nonprofit professionals. Deb has also served on many nonprofit boards. She was a founding board member of Youth Development Executives of King County, is past treasurer of Rain City Rock Camp for Girls, the past board chair of Out in Front, a leadership program for the LGBTQ community, and founded Q-Fest in St. Louis, an LGBTQ-focused film festival in St. Louis. And Deb is also going to be joined by Linda Ireland. Linda Ireland splits her time between governance and engaged philanthropy. In a career crossing 8 industries and a dozen different functional leadership chairs, Linda plays one role consistently: help people envision an ideal future, then think backwards to create the cultural and operational transformation necessary to achieve it. Linda is an active director on private and non-for-profit boards. She has chaired the boards of the Braun Intertech Corporation, Social Venture Partners Minnesota, Hennepin Theater Trust, and Community Health Charities America. She's also led governance, audit, and several ad hoc committees. In corporate roles, Linda was co-founder and partner of Aveus, a boutique global consulting firm. Clients and colleagues appreciated Linda's ability to cut through the clutter, defining her as dynamic and collaborative. Prior to Aveus, Linda served in 7 progressive positions over 9 years at Deluxe Corporation, driving emerging growth for 3 brands and leading groups in corporate development, operations, and manufacturing, product development, and entrepreneurial startup. At Genesis Direct, Linda helped this acquisition roll-up model achieve 27 acquisitions and integrations, a successful IPO, and growth from $15 million to $350 million. Linda holds 2 bachelor's degrees from the University of Minnesota. She earned a master's in business from the University of St. Thomas, go Tommies, and taught in the school's MBA and executive MBA programs for 15 years. She's committed to the systemic change needed to close health, economic, and racial equity gaps, and invests her time, talent, and dollars to see a world free of these injustices. She's an insatiable global traveler, photographer, and learner. Welcome, Deb and Linda.
thank you so much for having us here. We ready to go? All right, awesome. Thank you so much. We're really glad to have the opportunity to speak with you today. We know that you're all involved in community in so many different ways, and we want to make you aware of Social Venture Partners Minnesota because it could potentially be a resource for you, for the nonprofits you work with, or as a possible supplement for your work in the community, for your companies, and the work you do with Rotary. We will have a short presentation and then some time for questions and answers. And today we'll talk about who we are, how we work with people and organizations, and answer any questions you may have. So as you heard, I'm Deb Salls. I'm the Executive Director of Social Venture Partners, new back to Minnesota after a number of years, so glad to be back. And Social Venture Partners is about 20 years old. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary this year, which is a great milestone. But also we know that not everyone in the Twin Cities has heard about us. So here we are making sure that you're all aware. The Social Venture Partners model started 24 years ago in Seattle and has gone worldwide, and is the idea of connecting philanthropists with the community to be more active and engaged in the work that's done. And we have some slides for you. And I'm just gonna forward. There we go, to our mission, vision, and values. So Social Venture Partners Minnesota catalyzes equitable social change by expanding the impact of youth-serving organizations and building an effective community of engaged philanthropists. And we do that by providing funding for these youth-serving organizations and take it from different philanthropists. It's pooled together so we can provide grants. And we provide collaborative consulting support to the nonprofits along with the funding so that we can help them invest in innovative solutions that'll help them make a greater impact. Who we serve in the community for the nonprofits is youth-serving organizations. We work with youth ages 12 to 24, and these organizations work with youth who are really the furthest from racial, economic, and social justice. We find organizations that are at a critical crossroads or an inflection point in their journey as an organization, and they may be ready to scale, expand, advance their work, dig into some of the back office work that they have to really make sure that they can perform more effectively and efficiently with the youth they serve. We are prioritizing BIPOC-led organizations. We work in the 7-county metro area, and the pandemic has taught us one good thing is that we can do a lot of this work remotely via Zoom, and it's actually been sometimes easier for the organizational leaders to meet with us and the partners in this work via the internet. Examples of the organizations we've served, there's many, but I'll just throw up a few of the recent ones. And for example, Brand Lab was in a very specific situation when we helped them. They were looking at possibly expanding their work. They didn't know if they were going to move to other cities or expand within the metro area or the state. And eventually they did. They're now in 3 different metro areas around the country. And the partners at SVP Minnesota were really instrumental in helping to make those decisions with them, providing them the tools and the resources so that they could figure out exactly what to do next. You may have children in your life that are involved in worthy orgs, or you may serve on boards, and we want to help to get the word out about our grants. Our grant cycle is coming up soon. We'll open it in July, and our grants are generally multi-year, unrestricted, around $20,000 per year for a few years. And we are supporting 8 to 10 organizations at any given time. We do also offer short-term grants and cohort models where we can help the executive directors peer learn with each other and others in the community so that they can find the support they need, because it's always challenging running an organization where it's whether it be for-profit or nonprofit, and there's a lot we can learn from each other. I'm going to turn it over to Linda Ireland to talk about some of the other things we do.
Thanks, Deb. I realized one thing, I need to shorten my bio. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Sophie talked to me about 100-year-old egg in China in front of a business executive. I think we could find some commonality there. I met Social Venture Partners about 5 years ago. You heard about what I've always called my blissfully twisted corporate career over about 30 years. It was eight different industries, bunch of different functional roles in corporations at all stages of the proverbial life cycle, and in lots of different either startup or emerging growth or turnaround situations. And what I found is I was building a career where I'm not a database candidate. don't have 20 years of experience in anything. This ability to just meet a group of smart, well-intended people, help us all see what an ideal future looks like, and then reverse engineer it. It's the only job I've ever had. It's really the only thing I've ever done, regardless of the kind of role or the corporate structure that I was in. And about 5 years ago, I decided to sell the interest in my consulting firm in order to make room in my life for this kind of Venn diagram kind of existence, where I could split my time between boards and doing some kind of hands-on philanthropy and supposedly working on Linda, making some more time for that. And the boards part of my life was already active and in place, so that was easy. But the engaged philanthropy piece, I really didn't understand how I was going to do that. And so I found SVP through research. I started researching impact investing and what collaborative change could mean in a corporate environment. I'm a pretty social person. Scott and I have a past chapter together, whereas we both served on the board of Hennepin Theater Trust, and Scott knows I'm a process out loud person. I love the ping pong that happens when people from different perspectives are talking about an issue and something amazing always falls out on the table. Those are my favorite moments. And so I thought, I can't work by myself. And if I wanted to do philanthropy, just knocking on the door of a nonprofit and saying, hey, you can use me for a year, pro bono, just wasn't going to be, while it might have been meaningful to the organization, I knew it would be not good for me personally. So I learned my way into SVP through the idea of engaged philanthropy and kind of figuring out what the heck that meant. SVP allows me fundamentally to multiply the impact of dollars that I give to philanthropy every year, because it's aggregated with our other partners and sponsors that like corporations and grants that we get, but our majority of our funding does come from our partners. And so my dollars get aggregated and invested in these really amazing youth serving nonprofits that are doing some incredible things to change our community for the better. And I get more done collaborating with SVP partners than I would be if I just knocked on that door, even if that did fit for me. From a social style perspective, the idea that I get to work in collaboration with partners from who have different lived experiences than I do and different skills than I do. Sometimes an organization needs an introvert. And it's just a really great idea to have that complementing and multiplying impact of my time too. And frankly, I've learned from and become friends with some really kick-butt dynamic people that I would not have met otherwise. And I count them among our SVP partners here in Minnesota, but also folks I've, like Rotary, we're a global network. And so the folks that I've met throughout our network and some of the nonprofit leaders that we've engaged with have become friends of mine. And I've been inspired by and learned from them on a daily basis. Over the past 5 years, I've been involved in 5 or 6 impact teams. Some of the organizations that you see up here, Reclaim does mental health services for queer and trans youth. The Bridge Makers that you see over there on the left, that organization is led by 3 young people, 19, 21, and 17. And they were responsible for getting the unemployment law changed during the pandemic. I didn't know this, but our unemployment law in Minnesota was written so that if you were in high school, you were ineligible for unemployment benefits. So it didn't have anything to do with age. So if you quit school, you could get unemployment benefits. But if you stayed in school, you couldn't. And the law was, as you can imagine, written years ago when everybody thought employment by high school students was pocket change. You know, they don't really need that. Well, these kids are supporting their families. And so they got that law changed. And they've created a nonprofit that is doing coaching young people who want to be social entrepreneurs and coaching young people who want to use the arts as performance power. And they're actually leading a national change makers conference for youth next month here in Minnesota. Their experiences just blow me away every time I meet with them. So as a partner, I can tell you that, you know, SVP is great for individuals that if you're looking for a way to, you have some funds and you want a flexible way for your dollars to have an impact in our community. It's also a great way to meet other professionals who are interested in using their skills in a different way. And I can tell you that across the 80 or 90 partners that we have here in Minnesota, some of us want a new way to use our skills. So we have a CFO who says, just put me on projects where you can use my finance skills. We have some people who say, you know, I'm a CIO or a tech person during the day. I want to learn something new. Put me on a team where I can bring the perspective of a person who understands technology architecture, but don't make me do that. I want to learn marketing. So that opportunity to use your skills in a really interesting way. It's also great to find organizations that have been kind of pre-vetted and play a role in working with community leaders as well as across our partners and nonprofit partners in our grant making process to actually collectively decide where those social investments are going to go, which has been a really great experience for a lot of us because you really get to know who's doing what in our community and who's driving the change. I'd also say it's really great involvement for those of us whose involvement changes on a year-to-year basis. I'm someplace, you know, I made a deliberate choice that this was going to be the life I was leading for a while. So I have significant time to invest, but I'm different. I'm unusual that way. Most of the folks who belong with us, you know, their time and their engagement ebbs and flows, but it's their way of combining what they want to donate from a time and talent perspective with what they want to donate from a philanthropy perspective. Fundamentally, I found that this is just a really different, I've served on a lot of boards in the last 25 years, some corporate, but many nonprofits. And I can tell you that, you know, for those of us as business leaders, that's typically the way when we get to this point in our lives where it's like, that's a way to give back, you know, get involved on a board. And I'm not knocking that. I still serve on lots of boards, but the opportunity to do this is different because you have a more personal way of collaborating with leaders to help lift what they're already good at. It's not about going in and fixing what's wrong, but it's like watching, as Deb said, organizations that are at an inflection point and saying, imagine what could happen in our community if Reclaim could treat twice as many kids, right? Imagine what would happen in our community if the Brand Lab was in 3 cities instead of 1. Or if they had a scalable talent model, because many of them are at this point where you've seen this happen with small businesses. They're all at this point where the boards are asking, we know we need to be something different 5 years from now, but we can't see what that looks like. So the engagements that on the issues that we work on with nonprofits range from strategy to marketing to fundraising to HR and org design and scaling operations. They're really looking for a lot of different kinds of collaboration and in terms of what makes the most difference to them. And so there's a place to find most anything that matches your interests, as well as there's just lots of different ways to have an impact. So our grant investee partner challenges vary quite a bit. And what success looks like is driven by the impact that the organizations that we work with are able to have in community. That's what they're looking for from us, is help us expand or grow our impact. And so what we try to do in community when we think what makes us successful as an organization, it's not a lot different than what you're doing as Rotarians, is this opportunity to make a difference in the community by having lives improved by virtue of the work that you do. We're just a little different that we do it in our operating model as collaboration in combination with dollars. We do have relationships with companies and different kinds of organizations. I mentioned that the majority of our funding comes from aggregated contributions from people like me, but we do have critical and growing kinds of relationships that are financial collaboration partnerships as well. And certainly each company's goals and cultures are unique, but we work best with those who want to grow or expand their organization's impact in the community, or want their employees to engage more in community and are looking for a way to strengthen their culture as a way to do that. There are lots of different approaches, as you can imagine. I just talked to you about my experience as a partner, but as organizations, what typically companies are looking to do is that question of improving company of culture, employee engagement, or brand awareness, or organization connection to community and investment in community. So a really common approach is companies will say, you know, we'll sponsor X number of employees to play a role as just partners like me, but instead of them making the philanthropic contribution, we'll make the contribution on their behalf. Some want that skills-based volunteering and engagement to happen inside the company. So they essentially adopt our model, and we pre-vet the organizations for them and give them candidates to choose, but then they have employee teams that go through the process of selecting who they want to work with, and then groups of employees, all from that same company, will do the collaboration that I talked about. We have organizations that sponsor specific grant cycles or specific programs or specific organizations, but they see the advantage of multiplying their investment or the power of putting the relationships together in community. And of course, there are some who simply want brand sponsorship of events or programs to increase awareness and relationship in community. This is philanthropy. And so from a dollars perspective, just to share a little bit about how that works and how the math works for us. We have partners like myself where contributions started about $6,000 a year and grow from there based on what's meaningful and capable for each individual or household. We also support younger professionals, which is up to 40. And if you're less than 40, I still love you. But we acknowledge that it takes a while for folks to have we want to make sure that contributions are meaningful, but not overburdensome for people who are early in their careers. So our contributions for those under 40 start at $1,000. And that includes education professionals and nonprofit leaders as well, because the economic capacity in those occupations isn't there, but their voices are so important. And the nonprofits that we work from make us stronger. And then finally, we also have an outreach program where we nominate and work with what we call our fellows. And these are folks on the front lines of creating social change in our community, but again, are looking for a way to participate in this kind of collaboration that don't have the economic and sometimes the time investment unless they come in as a fellow. So basically, as Deb said, our goal in being here was really just to get to know y'all, and it's been really wonderful doing that. I'm just going to hit pause and see if you have any questions. How does something work? Or go ahead.
Many of us are familiar with the cookie cart. Matt Halley was actually a member of our Rotary Club. And I'm curious, while you were working with them, did you plan to take it across the country now? Because that's what I'd like to see.
That is a really great example of an organization who's thinking about how do we scale. Before they decided to go across the country, they went across the river. So I'm not sure if you know of this, but they have a plant in St. Paul now. And then from a growth perspective, pandemic happened. So that kind of hit the skids on that. And now it's how to grow their impact here in the Twin Cities. It was a really interesting conversation about how to change the financial model for that organization when they made their earned income came from selling cookies that were typically used as corporate gifts or catering essentially for corporate meetings like this. And when those things weren't happening anymore, the conversation really became about how do we diversify our revenue. What else? We love cookie cart though, by the way, they're very tasty. And Matt's awesome.
I was wondering how the various groups hook up with social venture partners. Do they seek you out? Do you seek them out, or?
Ooh,
A
great
little both?
question. Yeah, great question. It is a little bit of both. We do a grant cycle once a year, and it's coming up. Our opening of our grant cycle will come up this summer. And so over the course of the summer, we actually go out and we seek organizations that are a good fit for us, particularly if we're going to do a focused grant cycle. So for example, we were looking for Indigenous organizations to fund. And so we really needed to get to know community. So that causes us to go out and do some relationship building to understand community a little bit better. But we do open our grant cycle once a year. And it is a collaborative group of SVP partners with voices from our fellows as an advisory committee that go through our grant making process. It's a great question, though.
I have a question. I'll just stand up here. So do you work with any other Rotary clubs, and how might we work with you? You know, Rotary is big on leveraging our dollars, and particularly with the district grants that we get and the international grants, we really do a good job of leveraging our money. But we're always looking for other opportunities. So is there a way to work? Do you work with any other Rotary clubs, and is there a way we might work with you?
Also a great question. And I'm looking at Deb just so she can make sure that I don't step offline here. This is actually a relationship building exercise for us. And we've met with 2 other Rotaries in the past couple of months. And we're open for what that relationship could look like. Sometimes it just seems silly if you can't find a way to exchange support for one another as 2 nonprofit organizations trying to figure out how to do that. We're here thinking about you as a Rotary. We wanted you to get to know us as individuals and thinking about what employees in your organizations might like. But from a Rotary perspective itself, there's got to be a way that we can help leverage that funding for you and make it both, you know, aggregating and, you know, that multiplier impact yourself. It's kind of what we're about is multiplying effort for impact. We'd figure that out. And so if you had, do you work closely with other specific Rotaries, or is it more about the specific district?
Yeah, we work with other Rotary clubs all over.
Great.
So an additional question that I noticed in your presentation, I'm aware of Social Venture Partners and have been for a long time. Thank you for your work. It's fantastic. Adding to, I know in the past that you used to focus on nonprofits that had something to sell, that had a product. And I noticed in this new iteration that it looks like you've reshaped that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, great questions. The answer is no, we don't focus by if you have something to sell. Again, my history goes back 5 years, although I've met a lot of the founders of Social Venture Partners here in Minnesota, and many of them were entrepreneurs themselves and had kind of an entrepreneur mindset to what they were doing. It's not that we don't think that's right. It's just that what we think is more important is the demonstrated impact that organizations are having in helping youth improve their lives and have the lives they deserve. And so some of our organizations are education oriented. One is World Savvy, for example, that some of you might be familiar with. They're working with educators across the country to reimagine education, to help kids know more, do more, and care more in their world, and kind of give teachers a way to provide an environment that isn't a siloed education that provides kids with standardized skills for standardized jobs that don't exist anymore, working with people who look just like them. To being more successful in this kind of society. And so they're an education nonprofit. We have several other education nonprofits. I mentioned Reclaim, and we work with Face to Face as well. They tend to be more homeless and mental health oriented. So their focus isn't so much important as it is the impact that they're having on 12 to 24-year-olds in our community. Because as strong as we are as a country and in Minnesota and as Twin Cities, Minnesota is shockingly at the bottom of our 50 states in terms of education gap. 50% of the percentage of students of color that graduate from high school is lower here than it is anywhere in the country. And our wealth gaps and our home ownership gap and our homelessness gaps are bad as well. So we look for organizations that are on the cusp of being able to expand that impact. Anything else? Oh, I see one more.
Like Sean, I vaguely remember from my background, knowing about social venture that it seems to me used to have an annual like cup where young groups of people would come together and present a business plan, an idea, and based upon that, there would be, you know, awards that guaranteed them a combination of funds and resources.
Yep.
Do you still do something like that and within the context of your organization?
Another great question. You know, one of the things that many of our SVP affiliates have learned, there's about 45 affiliates of SVP across the globe. About 65% of them are here in the States. And as Deb mentioned, Seattle was the first one, so they tend to be fairly big. Chicago is bigger than we are. But many of, they all carry the same model that I've described, you know, this combination of multiplying for impact. And some of them do those kinds of competitions. They'll call it fast pitch, and they'll select organizations to participate in that. And they put them through like a 3-month accelerator where it's like, get your pitch right, practice it, and then put it in front of a big group of people, and we'll jointly fundraise together. In our community, we do that collaborative learning in that we do multi-year grants, and we also do 1-year grants. And Deb is actually strengthening our ability to treat those groups as cohorts, so that collectively we're actually changing the system, doing more systems change, but also so those cohorts can learn from each other as well as from the collaboration with us. But it's after they're already funded. And so we're kind of taking the competition element of it out of it. We heard from EDs where we used to get down to, you know, the top 3 finalists, and then we would have what we used to call pitch night, and they would come present, and then the partnership would vote on which organization we were going to fund. That was the conclusion of our grant making process. And it left all of us not feeling very good, because all 3 organizations that presented were worthy organizations. The EDs didn't feel very good because they'd meet their peers and they'd think, I feel bad if I win, because those guys really need to be funded. And so we just moved that collaborative pitching part to after they already are a cohort and they've been selected. And we let the grant making process be more power sharing with nonprofit leaders and ourselves. And more of a get to know you process. Are we a good fit for one another, instead of do you meet these administrative criteria? So I think that's something that's been just more kind of contemporizing how we work with community and share power with community, instead of trying to create a really narrow gate that people have to compete to get through. I love these questions. Awesome. Well, the one thing that we haven't talked about is how I've learned from the programs that we do. So we've talked about the impact that we do with in community with these organizations. But as I said, Deb's done a really great job of kind of helping that group be more of a cohort, and helping the EDs and alumni that we have work more in concert with partners as well. So the mutual education is on things that we're all trying to learn more about. So everything I said about the state of education in Minnesota, I know more about that than I did 5 years ago, because I'm learning from community and I'm learning from experts. But the choose your own adventure part of it still stays very flexible. So I'm just excited that we got to know y'all today. So I really appreciate you having us here. I appreciate the questions. And I think we've got lots of creative options by which we could both kind of strengthen each other's efforts in community. Oh, I see Ellen's got one in the back.
This isn't so much a question. I know. Sitting back here with Linda and Deb, I can see that they brought some pages, which one of them deals with the 20th anniversary party. Oh, it involves golf. I'm looking at you, Jim.
It does.
Anyway, we did
And
not
I'm
have
taking
time.
foursomes if anybody's interested.
Well, we did not have time to put these on the table, but since my watch says we have a couple of minutes, Could I take them around and maybe someone else could help me pass them out to the tables while we're here and while Linda is still telling us about the organization? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we're having a 20th anniversary birthday party, celebration of 20 years of impact on September 30th. There'll be a golf tournament, a fundraising dinner, getting to know all these great organizations and the leaders. So if you are able to come, that would be excellent. And we can follow up with you. My contact info is up here. We can always be found and help spread the word about SVP if you know any great organizations that could apply for our grants or people who might want to be involved.
Awesome. Thanks
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Deb and Linda, thank you so much. In lieu of a speaker's gift, we do ask that you sign a book, which will be given to a third grader through Way to Grow, so that they will have a book of their own signed by two leaders this time in our community. And so I will get that book to you to sign, and we really do appreciate your being with us today. Thank you so much. All right, this is dangerous. I'm going off script because I don't have I left my thing over there. But next week, it's not the installation yet. Hey, I know when it's going to be. But next week, we are going to have our vocational roundtable. So you aren't going to want to miss that. Sean Irwin will be back here leading our vocational roundtables next week. I want to thank all of those who participated today. Meg, thank you so much for being our day chair. Sean, thank you for the reflection today. What a great crew. We're expanding our crew. Anna, you did a great job today. Thank you very much. Anna, Ross, Brock, and Greg, thank you all for your help here with our audio visual. And thank you all for being here today. Have a great Rotary week.